Thank you so much once again, Ingeborg, joining us from Holland. And it's a wonderful possibility once again for the platform of research to have different expertise from different domains and expertise, so that we can definitely build up certain, specific body of data to make it open for research and academic purposes. At the same time, it's to be used for the betterment of our society, covering different perspectives and different dimensions. So that's the reason you're on board with us. Thank you so much. We are very glad to have you. And your BSc in hospitality, pioneering expert in transformation, specialization in emotional healing, mindset and body work, an international best-selling author, and you're also preparing TED Talk, certainly a big talk, hefty talk. So these are some of the things that we have trying to sort of brief you up, and we're very glad once again that you on the platform on board with us. Would like to move on to my first question, a very important question. The subject is certainly very important. The question is this, where it says, how can employees narcissism in the workplace, ma'am?
How can they recognize it? That's what you're asking. The narcissism in the workplace, yes. Well, there's certain types of behavior, what you can see. First of all, narcissists are very charming people, and it usually takes a bit of time for people to recognize it, but that the recognition is in the patterns. So they start doing the same things over and over again. And if you pay attention, then you can pick up on those. And one of them is a lack of accountability. And that means that they will do something, but it's never their fault. So they point fingers on other people. They will never take the blame. So it's always someone else's fault. You can see that in a pattern. They manipulate and they gaslight. So they twist conversations because they don't want to take the blame, and they just make it like it's your fault. And it's very subtle, and that's why it usually takes some time for people to pick up on it, and you start doubting yourself. So if that happens many a time, that could be a sign. Obviously, it's good to question yourself sometimes, but if it happens all the time with the same person, chances are you be gaslight in believing it's your fault. They have an excessive need for validation. So they want to be the hero, or I don't know, what's the word, a female hero? Something, I don't know the word for it. So they want to be the hero in the story. Whenever something happened, when there's money being made, stuff like that, it's always there doing. And they want to get the validation for that. And not just like, a good job, but, keep on, getting these validation remarks from people, and then they feel good. They have a tendency to play favorite, and that means within a group there's always something which is their favorite. So, and other people will be sort of, not be in the league, and that's good for the person who is the favorite, for a while, but not so good for the people who are not in that position. That's what they do. And they have an inability to handle criticism. And that comes back to that manipulation stuff and the lack of accountability. So whenever even if it's constructive feedback, they just don't want to hear it, because in the end, the essence of a narcissist is someone with a very fragile ego. So any criticism, even if it's constructive feedback, which should be, normal in a work environment, they can't handle it. So it always comes back to you. If you do try, and if you don't know you're dealing with a narcissist from the beginning, it'll come back to you, and you will be, put aside. What I said, they like the playing favorites. What I said before, you're not in their game anymore, and they make it very, very hard for you to even stay in that environment.
So, thank you so much for letting us know on this important their characteristics. They're not going to be taking the blame, kind of giving the blame, and accountability is not there, and kind of trait and characteristics they possess being narcissistic. Would like to move on to my second question. Again, important question. It says, what impact does a narcissistic leader have to team dynamics? It's in one question, man.
The leader doesn't just affect the individuals; it affects the whole team dynamic, and their style often leads to fear-based decision making. So people are not free to just, what I said in the beginning, tell what they want to say. They are afraid of speaking up, afraid of retaliation. And that stalls like innovation, and that stalls like creativity. So that's a huge part of what happens. It's a very sort of toxic competition. You'll see that in a team because of the playing favorites, what I said earlier as well. And people start competing within a team, which is which is never really good for a team. You should, be helping each other and lifting each other up, so make the whole team better. But because of their manipulation and gaslighting as well, the team dynamics change, and it becomes a very toxic competition, which obviously doesn't work in the end. A lot of times people experience burnout, and like the turnover of people staying, once they realize they're in this toxic environment and the people above them or a colleague is not moving. A lot of people they do get burnout because the narcissist can how you say it? They can work or do the things they want to do by the blessing of like empathetic people. And if you're empathetic, you're more prone to burnout anyway, because you start working harder, you start taking things on, you think you take the blame and stuff like that. That is all things that happened to be needed to get a burnout, so to speak. So that's part as well, and there's a lack of trust. Lack of trust within the team, you doubting yourself, so there's no trust in yourself anymore, and because of their doings, their subtle manipulation and gaslighting, doubting yourself, and people is like they become disengaged because what I said, there's the fear within the team, this toxic, and then people disengage. They don't want to be, they just do the bare minimum. And whenever they speak up, or what I said earlier, constructive feedback, it will backlash on them. So it's not good for the morale overall.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for letting us know on this important, narcissistic personalities. How do they impact negatively team dynamics? And it's like manipulation, gaslighting, and a lot of other negative traits. I figure out it's really pathological, pathetic situations that we run into when we encounter a narcissistic personality, specifically when it comes to particularly talking about the context when the leader happens to be a narcissistic personality. So I would like to move on to my third question, important question. It says, how can employees handle narcissistic colleagues or bosses?
First of all, and that's the most hard one, don't take it personally. The best thing what to do with a narcissist is what they call the gray rock method, is don't take things personal, because it's not about you. It's about them, obviously. They just use people, so to speak. So it has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your colleague or whatever. And that's what I said. It's the hardest one because obviously if people manipulate you and yeah, make this toxic environment, and there's a lack of trust, you do take it personally. But that's, you have to sort of harden yourself and not take it personally. Because it could be you, it could be your colleague, it could be anyone, it doesn't matter. They use people. And some people are more prone to it. What I said earlier, the empathetic people are more prone to it because they can mold them, they can use them. So that's the first one. And the second one, which is sort of related to it, set firm boundaries. That's hard for empathetic people usually as well. You know, the codependent, the people-pleasing people, it's very hard for them to set boundaries, but that's what you need to do. You will tell them what you will and won't tolerate, and you have to stick to it. That's the only way you can sort of stay in that environment. Another thing, document everything. Which sounds a bit silly because you're at your workplace and you think, oh, I have to document, but you have to, because they rewrite stories and conversations, and if you don't have a real good memory and you don't have any proof, because it's your word against them, against their word, and if there's like a different position, they are above you, it's very hard to stick to that position and to stick to your conversation because you're afraid of your job, you're afraid of your position. And if you document everything, if you know after a while someone is a narcissist, start doing that because it will help you. Maybe if you need to move and leave your job, you need that because it's proof. So that's the one. Manage up, and that means that you can give them some sort of boost, like, oh, if you want to do that, because of their fragile ego, they really want that validation, and if you use that. Like, oh, you're doing such a good job, you'll be in you know, the higher up of you will see you, it's very good, you will be in a good position and stuff like that. They will like that, that boosts their ego, that will help you. So it's yeah, it's a tricky way you can use. Find allies like colleagues, you know, sort of team up and talk about it, and especially to see that you are not wrong, that you're not starting to doubt yourself. If you find your colleagues and they have the same experience, well, chances are, you know, you're both right. And in the end, if you've done all that and it's still not workable for you, then prepare to walk away. Just prepare, and then, because your sanity and your health is much, much more important than staying in a place and become burnout or sick or whatever. So that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, for letting us know on this important topic. And as you mentioned, like, if I'm making it right, grave rock method, it's not about you, it's about them. The negative part is, you know, it's their sloppy part, it's their disconnect, it's not something wrong with me. So that's very important, that that's the right lead. Would like to move on to my fourth question. Important question says, what can organizations do to prevent toxic workplace?
Well, actually, that starts really at the beginning, because we were talking now like they are already there. But we like to start sort of reverse engineer, prioritize the emotional intelligence in hiring people. So, and that sort of, you know, gets into the HR department. The people there needs to be trained and coached in what kind of people they're hiring. Need to have the information about what narcissists do and don't. and what they are, and they need to be trained so they can hire people. If they can, it's maybe hard, like in a conversation, but see the signs, know what to look for, and know what kind of people you need in your business, in your company, and so it starts before getting the people on board. And obviously, you hire people with the technical skills and whatever they need, but it should be about integrity. It should be about authentic leadership. It should be about openness, and those kind of things that they should in HR should look for in hiring people. So that's the one, and even with promotions as well, because some people might have narcissistic tendencies, which in a sort of structured environment wouldn't come out, but once they get to the top and that ego gets sort of inflated, it will come out because of the pressure, because of, maybe a toxic environment anyway. So we have to look for that as well in promoting people, because of the damage they'll do once they're in that position. So another thing is the safety, the psychological safety. People on a team, in the company, should we feel safe to talk about their concerns, and not that it goes against them if they talk about their boss, and hold people accountable. That there's a certain environment we work in, integrity, what I said, openness, people could talk about their concerns, and if people do something, you should be able to tell them. And if that's not possible, there's something wrong with the culture in that company. So that's one as well. And what I said earlier, that train the leaders and train HR to see the signs, know what to look for, and that it's not acceptable. And healthy leadership, what I said, the integrity, what we want, emotional intelligence, authentic leadership. That's where people thrive. Not with fear, not with lack of trust, not with the playing favorites and things like that. That is not how a company grows and the people thrive.
Yeah, it's important, and your narratives and your explanations are certainly very, very scientific, and they're helpful. You've used like prioritizing emotional intelligence while recruiting or maybe hiring candidates for an organization setup. I personally agree that hiring process by HR department or units is certainly, hiring is like a bloodstream of an organization. If that's appropriate and authentic and scientific, the organization will certainly blossom to its fullest capacity and maturity. So that's what I figure out. Now would like to move on to my fifth question, final question, wrap-up question, but very important question, ma'am. Says, how does workplace narcissism affect long-term business success?
It's long-term damage. Actually, usually in the beginning, especially in like sort of competitive environments, it will work if a narcissist is there because they get results usually over the head of someone else. That's usually the thing. But in the end, it's a high turnover, what I said earlier. People start leaving and you've got a loss of talent, which is not good. In the end, people will choose for themselves once they burn out and things like that. So that's not good for a company, for the growth. It'll cost time to get new people, it'll cost money. You have to get them on board, and the whole cycle sort of repeats if nothing is happening with the narcissistic leader. Reputation damage. Nowadays, it's not like it's just in the company nobody knows, because you have sites with like Glassdoor or even LinkedIn, people know. People start hearing stuff. They can look it up, and a negative word travels a long way. And if it's only one, it's only one. But if it continues, that does something to your reputation. And obviously, because of what the people leaving the company, there's decreased innovation. Because in the end, it's just putting out fires, so to speak, rather than using the talent and building on and growth, because that's what a company is for, making products or services and growing. And you don't, because you're just putting up fires, so to speak. And there's a loss of talent, and then there's a loss of innovation. And usually, sorry, my throat again. Usually there's a poor decision making as well. Because of not the cohesion within the team, there's the lack of talent, what I said, there's a lack of innovation, and they make decisions based on their ego, not what's good for the company. And that's the whole thing. They have to flourish because that's their sort of purpose in life, the narcissist. And it's not about the company. For them, it's about them. How they perceive like the hero and stuff like that. So they don't think about the company and the long-term growth and sustainability and everything like that. So they make decisions based on whatever, the day of the week, or how they perceived better. So that's not good for the company. So in the end, it'll never work. It'll never work.
Yeah, thank you so much that you've briefed us up, not just briefed, but you've given a deep kind of explanation, and narratives have been very good. And we've also used a sentence like it's not about, it's just about them, it's not about the company. So they're self-centered. So flow of traits and characteristics you've talked about, and certainly it's going to be a wonderful possibility for our audience to watch this important podcast. You've talked about employees recognize narcissism in the workplace, and how does it impact leadership, like team dynamics, narcissistic personalities, employees handle narcissistic colleagues and bosses, how it can happen, and what can organizations do to work, mitigate or prevent the toxic workplace culture, and finally that narcissism workplace and long-term business success, how does it impact and effect. So very important dimensions and areas and subject you've talked about, and it's such a wonderful possibility. I'm sure that your narratives and explanations would certainly boost up a kind of qualitative and quantitative body of data among the listeners and watchers, our audience, and it's going to be a good tool for them, qualitative and quantitative as well at the same time. As you're already familiar, Riso is a platform where we actually try to step through noise to cause you most relevant and reliable sociological interpretations and narratives to build the society up. And at the same time, our focus is to make an open library database, which may be like quantitative and qualitative in its nature, and we try to cover different subjects particularly concerning societal change and development, and we want to hone up society, we want to make it more better, and that's the reason we conduct interviews covering different topics. It may be human rights, human trafficking, climatological issues, climate concerns, environmental issues, gender issues, historical dimensions, political stuffs, or maybe core science, medical science, public health, or maybe some other dimensions of science. And this is the topic we've talked for the very first time, and I was trying to get somebody to speak on this topic. It's certainly a very important topic, whether we work on government setup, or semi-government setup, or private setup, multinational company setup, in different stuffs we find kind of personalities which are who are pathological, such as being narcissistic leaders and colleagues, people around. They put down and water down the entire constructive environment of an organization. So important to learn your perceptions, man. Once again, thank you so much joining us from Holland, and it's really a blessing and a wonderful possibility to have you on the platform of Riso on board, ma'am.
Thank you very much.